I'll call the meeting to order. Columbia 911 Communications District regular meeting here, March 31st, 2022. Roll call. Mr. Heimuller. He's here. Mr. Halsey. By Zoom, and myself and Rob Anderson is en route, and we don't see Shelley.
Correct.
Okay.
And for staff, we have Mary Jo, Nancy Edwards, Danelle Hooper, and Alex Ettinger, and myself, Mike Fletcher. Online, we have Nathan and Chandra remotely. We have Ian Crawford, who is a presenter today. In the building, we have Tyler Miller, and you are, gentlemen?
Jeff Flatt.
Jeff, thank you. Thank you for being here.
All right, welcome everyone. Do we have any public comment this morning?
Mr. President, I have public comment.
Yes, sir, Mr. Miller.
Thank you. For the record, Tyler Miller, am I going to be able to be heard okay through the speakers?
Why don't you, if you wouldn't mind, would you come over here closer to the center just to make sure we can catch you?
Even over there by that one?
You are being heard.
Front and center. So first off, I just want to thank you, Sean, for your service on this board and to the service to the 901 district too. I've been coming to these meetings since you were, I think, first appointed, if I remember correctly, and then ran.
Yes.
Okay. And I just want to say that I've really appreciated everything that you brought to the board, to your dedication to this community, your integrity, your transparency has all been very appreciated, and it will be very missed as well.
Thank you.
Second, I have some comment about the executive director's report, specifically some notes here about the antennas on page 2, and then also the replacement of the 911 consoles too. However, I would like to ask the board that I be able to make that comment when that comes up on the agenda, if at all possible. I just don't want to say something that Mr. Fletcher might already cover, and I think it would allow my public comment to be more on point. It may be things that he already has to offer and talk about to the board, so I just don't want to talk about things that are unnecessary. Let's just put it that way. Or I can do it now. It's obviously up to the board.
I would say, yeah, let's wait till after Mike's comments, make sure that there's nothing that he covered that you didn't need to address.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on. Oh, presentation.
So, during a recent meeting with Columbia 911 Personnel Committee, the topic of filling the vacant GIS position was held. And that was due to the promotion of Danelle Hooper, who was most recently holding the role of the GIS tech, and she advanced to the operations manager. I walked the two board members through the option of how best to replace these job duties. And we went over 3 different options. One was an open recruitment process like we did when Danelle was successful in that process, going back out to the outside and or inside to find anyone who may be interested in assuming that role. Another option is to contract the service out. The state of Oregon has an authorized vendor who has state contracts with Oregon Emergency Management and the 911 program to provide those services to other 911 centers for their GIS needs. And the third option was to contract these services to the Magix organization, of which we already belong to, and who specializes in our regional CAD system and the special needs and requirements that are required for our CAD system and our GIS processes for the Northwest region of Oregon. During this meeting, several questions were asked, and to summarize them briefly, they were as follows. Why do we, or any PSAP, need to have their own GIS technician? Why can't these services be combined with other local governments, city and counties, who all have their own GIS staff? Is this not a duplication of services that would be better served to combine these services? These are all good questions. The overall tempo of that conversation was, a need for an education of really what it is that a PCAP uses for a GIS technician. What do we do differently, if anything, than a city or a county government's GIS process? Those are good questions, and so what I decided to do is ask the chair of the Magix GIS team, Ian Crawford, who happens to be the GIS tech for WACA, and as I mentioned, chairs the GIS committee for all of Magix. So we've invited Ian to attend today. He has a presentation prepared for us. And Ian, if you can hear me and are prepared, I think Nathan will allow you to share our screen for those online, and in the room we have a screen projector up for you.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here, Mike.
Okay.
So thanks for inviting me to your meeting. As Mike mentioned, I am the GIS tech analyst for WACA. I've held that role for the past 13 years. And my primary responsibilities at WACA involve configuring base maps for our dispatch staff as well as our police fire user agencies. And those responsibilities in some cases are very specific to WACA and our own users. And in some cases, the responsibilities extend out to all of Magix. As we mentioned, WACA, me specifically, is the GIS lead for Magix. So a number of the responsibilities and administrative tasks fall to our agency. So we'll get into the details of how those responsibilities are broken up in a little bit here. But the first thing I wanted to do was actually share with you what our maps look like and how they're configured, how they're brought together. There are a lot of different pieces to the puzzle. And what I've found over the years is that emergency response staff, even people who have been dispatching or police fire responders for many years, although they use the maps daily and they are very proficient at using them and understand why they're important, below the surface in terms of how they're maintained and managed, it's kind of a mystery to some of them. It's kind of this black box. And whenever we get new hires, I always try to open up that box and kind of share the backstory of how these things come together. So let me see here. So you can all hopefully see my map here. Hopefully, sometimes on a projector the colors kind of get washed out, so might not be a true reflection of what you would see as a dispatcher sitting at a terminal. But basically what we have here is what we call a base map. So a base map is a collection of map layers, and they're styled in a certain way, a certain set of colors, a certain set of symbols. So this day-based map is configured for with lighter colors. It's meant for full light conditions during the day, as the name implies. We also have a night-based map, and this is particularly useful for police fire agencies responding at night. It's easier on the eyes to see the information. It also, the darker colors make sure their computer screen is dark, so it's not like a big flashlight shining at them as they're driving around. And then our third kind of base map theme is an aerial photography theme. So aerial photography is basically captured from an airplane. In the Columbia area, these photos are refreshed once every 3 years. And I would say this is probably the most popular base map that dispatchers and responders use. So in regard to the base map, it's composed of a number of different map layers. And you can kind of conceptualize these map layers as layers of a sandwich. So, as with the sandwich, you build it from the first layer up. And so I'm going to actually turn off all of these layers so we can kind of build the sandwich together. So I've cleared out my screen, And this, by the way, is an application called ArcGIS Pro. This is the main application that we use to configure our maps. So our first layer is our grid. In the case of the map, that's the county fill layer. You can see it. Hopefully you can see it as a tan color. Is that showing up as tan on your end?
It is on the laptops or our computers, but on the screen it's kind of washed out, but you're okay.
Kind of washed out, yeah. So you'll just, if you're only watching the projection, you might have to imagine what I'm describing. So the second layer in the sandwich should say is lunch meat. In the case of our map, that's our city fill layer. So these are our incorporated city boundaries. The next layer in the map is a water fill layer. So there's the Columbia River in a light blue color, and I can even tweak some of these colors potentially to make them show up better. But as you can hopefully see, these layers stack on top of each other. So when I turned on the cities layer, it obscured the information beneath it. It obscured the county color beneath it. And when I turned on the river fill, it obscures the cities and the counties beneath it. And so on and so on as you move up the list of layers. So obviously anything that has a fill color, a filled in shape, we would want to put that on the bottom of the sandwich so that it doesn't obscure other features, which may just be a point or a line. So we'll put all our map layers back on here. And so at this regional scale, one important concept is that map layers are scale dependent. So depending on how close in or zoomed out you are, different map layers will show up. So at this county level, of the 30 map layers in our map, only about 5 of them show up at this scale. You wouldn't want to display tax lots at this level because tax lots are generally small. There are 40,000 of them in the county, and it wouldn't be useful information at this scale. So that's where scale dependencies come in. So as we kind of navigate closer in the map to a city level, we can start to see more information present: green mileposts, blue river mile markers, police stations, fire stations. We can zoom in a little bit closer and we can start to see the full street centerline network with all of the street names. Move in a little bit closer and we can see at a neighborhood level school boundaries, parks in green, and then the business logos, which is actually a relatively new addition to the maps. So recognizable logos for businesses. Zoom in a little bit more. Tax lot boundaries become visible, building footprints, and then as we move into our closest level, we can actually see house numbers and what we call premises, which is basically a collection of businesses, schools, churches, trailheads, basically anything with a common name. So that hopefully kind of demonstrates how each layer is scale dependent. And in the configuration of these base maps, we think about a lot of different things. So for one thing, we want these maps to be common between the 4 dispatch centers and common between all of the police and fire user agencies that are dispatched by those 4 centers. So that's what we call a common operating picture. We don't want 4 flavors of the dispatch map and 50 flavors of the police and fire map, because we want kind of interoperability. You know, back in the fall of 2020, when we had wildfires, Clackamas County dispatchers came up to whack the dispatch when their center was evacuated for a time. And so when they sat down the dispatch terminal, basically it was like they were looking at their own map, because they're identical maps. So that's kind of one of the advantages of Magic is, we can share resources, but we can also achieve more easily a common operating picture and uniformity than we would if we were all on separate CAD systems. So as we're designing these maps, we think about a number of different things that we're trying to optimize. So one is performance. We want really fast, responsive maps, And we do a number of things to achieve that, like removing extraneous attribute information. So for example, if someone provided us with a street center line that has pavement condition information, we don't necessarily care about that, so we drop that information. And then in terms of the geometry, the actual shape on the screen, we run simplification routines. So tax lots, for example, this tax lot is that the county maintains to a survey level of accuracy. So it might be made up of 50 different points, 50 vertices that make up the shape. And we don't necessarily need that level of accuracy, so we would generalize that and reduce it down to maybe 10 points. And then the less information that has to be displayed on the screen, the faster the map will perform. Legibility is another big thing that we focus on. So we're always trying to achieve this balance between displaying the maximum amount of information possible while maintaining a legible, readable map. So that's where the scale dependencies come in. We only display what's valuable at any given map scale. And then we use a lot of different tools and tricks to fit the information and make use of space. So in terms of labeling, for example, we have priority rules that dictate which layers have the highest labeling priority and will display first. And other rules that dictate, well, if we're trying to fit this label on the screen, do we reduce it in size, or do we overrun the extent of the feature on the map, or do we truncate the label? So there are a lot of different tools that we can configure to optimize the visual look. Color is another thing we already talked about with the day and night mode. So just colors that stand out, which you are not getting the feel for if you're looking at the projector necessarily, but good color combinations and that work well in day and night. And then symbology is another thing that we focus on. So we want recognizable symbols. Our traffic symbols are actually a little icon that looks like a traffic symbol, red, green, yellow. Fire hydrants actually look like a fire hydrant icon. And then, as I mentioned, we recently added these business logos, so you can hopefully see Texaco there. These very well-known logos, and the advantage there is in terms of real estate, it takes up very little. It's a small logo. You know what it is, and you don't require a long label to tell you that. So those are kind of considerations on as we design these maps. So that's a base map, and a base map is basically just a reference. We're trying to reflect the real world, at least the things in the real world that we care about. They're like reference points. So anything that a 911 caller would report, I'm at the Texaco, or I'm at the intersection of Columbia River Highway and Vernonia, we want these all to be reflected in the map. We don't care about, obviously, deciduous tree cover or, street lamps or things of that nature. So that's the reference map. And then the maps also have some more interactive functionality. And the two main ones are geolocation and routing. So geolocation is also known as address searching. So basically you take a text string, an address, say 123 Main Street, you type it into your search bar, and that address is parsed in with pieces. It's matched against our reference addressing data, which is our address points and our street center lines. And either an exact match is made if you map, zoom, and plot the dot on that point, or if it's ambiguous, say there are 123 Main Streets in the county, a pick list will show up, and a call taker will be able to select from that list. So geolocation is really important, and we spend a lot of time working with our address points and streets to make sure that the attribution is accurate and complete, so that we have a full accounting of basically all searchable locations within the region. And then the second interactive component is routing. So our street center line is, we call it a routable street network. So basically, center line has attribution related to street speed, one-way, elevation, so like overpasses and underpasses, or tunnels rather. and those all feed into a routing process that is the basis for turn-by-turn direction for responders, as well as response recommendations. So the system uses that routing network to see where all the eligible available units are in proximity to the incident, and then based on the time of traversal from their location to the incident along the street network, determines who would get dispatched to the call. So I think that's mainly what I wanted to show for the base map. I'll just pause because I've been talking a long time. If anyone has any questions about what I've shown so far. I also have a few PowerPoint slides to show, so we can hop over there next.
Mr. Chair, I have a question, if you don't mind. Please. Ian, thank you for this presentation. It's very enlightening. A question I have for you is, how is this different, or is it different than what we're already doing here in-house, or do you know?
Yeah, so that's exactly where we're going with the PowerPoint. So this is kind of setting the stage of what the maps look like, how they're kind of shared among everyone. So this is what is being utilized currently within Columbia Dispatch and user agencies. And we'll get into the breakdown of responsibilities in PowerPoint.
Thank you.
And what the proposal is for WACA supporting Columbia for its data maintenance needs.
So just as a reminder for the board, our CAD system is driven 100% by its map. It is a geo-dependent CAD system. So everything that the dispatcher call taker does is driven really from the base of the map, because everything from, as Ian mentioned, unit recommendations are based on where the unit is, and the street grid information about weight, speed, traffic signals, heights, weight limits on bridges are all calculated behind the curtains, and the CAD will then know, based on an engine company at 80,000 pounds versus a light brush rig, who's the best determined vehicle that should go to that call, and exactly approximate how long it's going to take them to get there, and so they're recommended. In addition to all of that is premise information that is embedded in the maps. So a business, there is an icon, a user, a call taker can select that information, and they have everything about that premises there. Who it belongs to, contact information, pre-plans are loaded in there. So map is really what controls our CAD system. The rest of CAD system is about communication, lists, massive amounts of data to reference, but for the day-to-day, every single moment, the map is what drives CAD. So there you go, Ian.
All right, thanks. So I put up PowerPoint here. So in terms of GIS responsibilities in support of dispatch and response, I think of them in three different categories or three different buckets. So the first bucket is Magic's related tasks. So responsibilities and administrative responsibilities that really impact all of the 4 PSAPs and all of the user agencies. And we've already discussed the first bullet point there, the dispatch and mobile-based map configuration. So that's a responsibility. You know, if we weren't part of Magic and all 4 PSAPs were on their own CAD systems, basically the responsibilities that we're sharing in regard to dispatch and mobile configuration would have to be done 4 separate times by the 4 separate agencies. So the fact that we're kind of a collective collaborating together, it basically allows one primary agency, which happens to be WACA, to do the bulk of the configuration of these maps in support of all of the dispatch centers. So there's a lot of efficiency that we're gaining through this Magic Magix partnerships. We don't all need to configure our own base maps. However, even though LACA is the lead agency and to take on the bulk of the responsibility of that, there's constant communication between the PSAPs, weekly if not daily, in regard to changing the configuration, changing layers, changing colors, enhancing the map. We're constantly in communication to make sure that what we're doing works for everyone. So other Magix-related regional tasks that LACA is the lead agency on are data aggregation and data loading. So in terms of our regional address file, so that's just a point layer, map layer, that represents all of the address points. So it's a searchable layer. We use it for our base map display, so you can see the number on the map, but then it's also part of that geocoding functionality where we can search for these address points. So basically, regionally, cities and counties and 911 centers and regional governments maintain this data. It depends depending on the locality. But all in all, we have 20 different sources that feed in to a regional, comprehensive, consistent map layer that spans all of our 4 PSAP service areas, and then as well as a buffer into mutual aid area, because we don't want our maps just to disappear into white space once we cross a jurisdictional boundary. So all of these different agencies maintain their data in some ways in a similar fashion and in some ways in a different fashion. So in regard to like the core information, everyone maintains a house number, a directional prefix, a street name, a street type, a community, and so on. But how that's maintained, what abbreviations are used, what the field names are called, it all varies. With the geographic extent, some cities maintain points beyond their jurisdictional boundaries. So there's a whole lot of manipulation. We run some automated scripted routines that take all that information, kind of massage it, stitch it together into comprehensive, consistent layers that have all the necessary attributions that CAB requires. So, for example, a persistent unique identifier, which is a field that has, it's a unique ID. Every record has a unique ID that stays consistent week to week, month to month, year to year. That's really important for our CAD system. So similarly to address points, we do this aggregation with other critical layers as well. Street centerline file being another one. So we've got maybe 10 or so layers that similarly we process, manipulate, stitch together into regional files that are
Ian, can I
consistent and uniform and meet the needs of the CAD system.
Ian, can I interrupt
So
you for a
there's quite bit of
second?
work.
Can you please
Yeah.
make that full screen so we can actually read
Yeah.
some of that? Hopefully. I'm questioning my readers. I think I may need to go full on.
Yeah.
Ah,
Beautiful.
thank you.
All right, so I'm going to move on to our next slide here. So that was the magic bucket of responsibilities. The second bucket is PSAP-centric GIS responsibilities. So these are typically things that would be performed by PSAP staff for their own PSAP. And it doesn't necessarily require someone with a GIS background to do, but GIS familiarity. So all of these things are addressing and spatially related in some way. So the first is very specific to 911 call routing. So MSAG ALI is just an acronym for Master Street Address Guide, Automatic Location Information. It's basically a database that controls how 911 calls are routed to the proper PSAP, and then that ALI information is basically for landline calls, what displays on the call taker screen associated with that number. So the owner's name, the account owner's name, and their address. So that's an important database that has to be maintained. Premises is another that Mike mentioned. We've got 40,000 premises regionally, businesses, schools, parks, trails, anything and everything that you might want to search that someone might call out at their location, and we try to include it in that premises database. Caution notes are also maintained within CAD, and spatial components are tied to either an address or a physical boundary for like a neighborhood that has a gate code. Basically responder safety information, gate codes, things of that nature. Roadblocks are things that we can add in CAD to temporarily reduce the street speed or block a street for road construction and things of that nature. And then another really important one is street name approval. So WACA works really closely with our city and county addressing authorities. How streets for new subdevelopments are assigned is extremely important. It's not just that the data, the GIS data itself is accurate, it's that the streets that are signed are easy to spell, easy to pronounce, not duplicated other areas within the county or even the region. Oftentimes as planners and developers are working to develop a name, they're maybe more thinking of what sounds good, what sounds attractive for this neighborhood, which might not necessarily line up with what is easy for a passerby to pronounce. Zworkin is one that always comes to my mind, VWY, in our area, and so we try to work with them to make sure that going forward, those assigned names work for us. So that's a really critical piece. So the final bucket is actually the data layer construction and maintenance. So as we talked about in our base map, we've got those 30 different map layers, those sandwich layers. And you can categorize them kind of into two groups. They're the absolutely essential GIS layers that we could not effectively operate CAD without. So those include the address points, the streets, which again are used in geolocation, in routing, in the base map display. Premises as well falls into those categories. And then response areas is one we haven't talked about. It's just a geographic area that ties into our response plan, so it kind of influences for any given call the complement of units that need to be dispatched to that call. The supplemental GIS layers are really important. Maybe I should come up with a different word than supplemental, but they're not absolutely required, but they really help to provide that common operating picture and build out the reference map. So that includes basically everything else in the list: building footprints, parks, trails, traffic signals, tax lot boundaries, you name it. So in terms of maintaining these layers, in some cases we get layers from the state, in some cases from regional government, in some cases we get the information from cities and counties, and in some cases we maintain the data ourselves if it's not available and no one else is maintaining it. So as we're maintaining this data, what we're focused on is currency. So we want there to be the smallest amount of lag possible between when an address is assigned officially by a city or a county and when it shows up in our dispatch map. We certainly want it to show up there and be searchable before a business occupies a new suite or a resident occupies their new house. So that's really important, having a workflow that the data is being created in a very timely manner and pushed out in a timely manner. Completeness is really important. We don't want gaps or omissions in our data, so we run various quality control routines to make sure that the data is complete. Accuracy is really important. Again, we run various quality control routines where we're kind of cross-referencing different data sets. That might be comparing our address points to tax lots, to business permits, to the telco landline information, and seeing where there are differences. So the county says this tax lot has a street type of boulevard, but our address point and USPS say that it's a street type of parkway. So we want to identify those discrepancies and resolve them. So all data sources, including commercial mapping, being in Google Maps, all show consistent, accurate information. So that's kind of in a nutshell is 3 buckets of information. And basically the proposal on the table, as Mike laid out, is that WACA would be supporting Columbia 911 and take on the responsibility of maintaining some of the core source data layers. So to date, WACA's support and involvement with Columbia has been in the magic bucket of configuring base maps, stitching all the data together in regional files, uploading it into the system, and now the proposal is to assist in kind of one step upstream from that, which is maintaining the data layer. And so one of the advantages of having that be performed within the PSAP, as Mike also touched on, is that we obviously have complete familiarity with the CAD system, the Central Square CAD system, and what its requirements are. So all CAD systems have their own unique requirements. And so to be able to maintain the source data in a way that aligns directly with the CAD system actually kind of ensures that the data will load correctly, and it removes the number of moving parts. So for example, in this other slide, there are a lot of moving parts here. There are a lot of agencies maintaining data layers. City of Hillsborough could change a field name, and that could impact how that data is incorporated. So wherever we can remove the number of moving parts is advantageous because it increases the reliability of the data getting loaded properly. So that's one of the advantages for WACA to provide a service of maintaining the core data sets of address points and street center lines. And then again, of all the uses of these data sets, really, and they're used, different city, county, departments, private sector relies on GIS information as well. But I would argue that the 911 center emergency response needs are kind of the most critical use of this data. So that's an argument for and a benefit of the data being maintained within the emergency response agencies to make sure that it's maintained in a way that meets our needs. So I'll stop there and kind of open it up for questions and discussion.
Were your questions answered, Henry?
Pretty much, yeah. I think that the reason that this came up was obviously the time to suggest looking into a process that we do is when an employee is no longer in the position and we're trying to decide whether and how to fill that position. And when I brought the question up, it was, okay, do we just do the same old thing that we've always done, hire, fill, and put them to work? Or is there a reason why this work can't be done by either one of our 911 partners or one of our municipality partners, whether it's the county or the PUDs or the cities, some of them? Everybody has GIS people, and does everybody need their own GIS person or people? And so thank you, Mike, for reaching out and following through with that. I guess it kind of comes down to for me, we know what an employee costs in that position, and it almost seems like we're creating efficiencies as we have through many of the other partnerships with Magix and the other counties that we're dealing with there. But what's the cost going to be compared to our own employee? I think the first benefit, of course, that I thought about was would this be less expensive if we contracted with another agency, regardless whether it was a 911 agency or county, city, or PUD or somebody in the neighborhood. So those questions haven't been addressed yet.
I'll try and help you with that. Within your board packet, you'll find a draft agreement between Columbia 911 and WACA for the services that were just outlined in this presentation, and within the document itself, the draft agreement. The services include our day-to-day GIS needs and allows room for special projects. The end result is this represents a net zero fiscal impact to the district, in that the billable amount that WACA will charge the 911 district will actually be covered by our 911 GIS funding, which is a separate line item distribution of the state's 911 dollars. You can follow that bouncing ball. So each quarter, the PSAPs who have GIS work being done submits a document to the 911 program in Salem for reimbursement for a portion of their people and or their services that they are contracting out. We do that, we've always done that, and then we get a reimbursement from the state. The proposal is that if we give this task to the Magix chair, Ian would be the person working on this. He would track his time just like Danelle did, just like Cindy did, just like Ian does for WACA, and he will send me a document saying I've done X number of hours over the past 2 months, 3 months, the quarter, and I sign off on it. That document goes to Salem, and then those funds would be directly sent to WACA to reimburse him for his costs on our behalf. So the point is to be net zero for us.
Does that mean what you're really saying is that we end up with the savings of an entire position?
So part of our my ask to the personnel committee was to try and be efficient. So we have an FTE that is dedicated as GIS technician today. I don't want to lose that FTE, but I truly believe that this is far more efficient in maintaining the FTE, repurpose it into a new role, IT tech support for Nathan, and facilities. We need somebody to change light bulbs, clean the gutters, help Nathan with the IT equipment and our site maintenance, all the tower sites. It's a lower cost than the GIS person, and so we save money that way, and we're not spending extra money to backfill the GIS because we're getting it reimbursed from the state. The other options, which are still on the table, is to contract with the vendor that's approved by the state of Oregon. We lose, what we would lose in that is the integration that is really needed for our CAD system. Ian is very well versed in our CAD system, and so we would lose that integration with CAD with the third-party vendor. If we hire somebody from the inside or outside and retrain them, that's an option. I will tell you that we did that process when Danelle was successful, and it was painful, and it's fraught with a lot of time and investment due to training them everything Columbia 911, training them on Columbia County geography, GIS equipment, training them on CAD. So it would be a very laborious, time-consuming process to hire someone new as an FTE of the district. So that was my point to the board, to the personnel committee. and hopefully we can answer any other questions you might have.
Who routes the data that needs to be changed to Ian? So something comes up, either the county, a new neighborhood is put in or whatever, new addresses, what have you. How does that get from Columbia 911 to Ian? Does that require Nathan or someone like that to
Get those data sources
Yes.
fed to Ian.
Right.
And I'll add one more thing to it. Not every day, but often a dispatcher catches something on their CAD that this is a glitch, something's not right on the map. Sometimes a user agency will identify something on their MDC that's not right. We get trouble tickets, and that's sent to our support email box. Those things would be shipped to Ian to look at. But Ian, I'll let you describe how you receive data sources from cities and counties, PUDs, etc.
Yeah. So you two different things. One that you just covered: any errors, issues, problems with the data that's identified by dispatch or by responders, that gets funneled through a mailbox, Columbia County mailbox, and then that gets channeled. So that's a good workflow for those types of issues. And then in terms of new address assignments from cities and counties, from the addressing authorities, Cindy had a list of all of those contacts. Those were passed to Danelle, and Danelle has passed those to me. So it's just a matter of reaching out to the addressing authorities and saying, add Ian Crawford to the distribution for new addresses. So we can cut out kind of a little piece. It doesn't have to necessarily channel through Columbia County and then route it to me. The St. Helens Addressing Authority can just send that information directly to me, and I'll incorporate it into the data layers.
Thank you.
I'm curious, have we been receiving GIS funding from the state to this point? Okay.
Well, I'll clarify that. There was a period of time, as we have shared before, that the 911 program experienced fiscal challenges, and so GIS was one of those things that was suspended, along with UPS maintenance, along with one of our a host of things were cut. GIS was one of them that has been reinvested, and so we do get those quarterly.
Does that cover, how much of our FTE was that covering?
Fractional. 12, was it 26,000 or 12,000? 48. So,
About half.
yeah.
A little over half.
Half our loaded cost.
Yep.
Bruce, Rob, any questions?
One question I had is that, so how's the service going to be? There's usually a big difference between having someone in-house and then someone that is, kind of just checking for work tickets. I mean, has that been thought of, or is that not a concern?
Ian, do you want to address that? The workflow?
Yeah, I mean, so within this agreement, this basically, in terms of my workload, in terms of my responsibilities to Columbia 911, it would be on a par with my responsibilities to WACA in terms of keeping the map complete, accurate, consistent, free of error. So it would really be an equivalent focus and priority in making sure that when cities and counties provided new addressing, that we digitize that promptly within the data layers, that we then aggregate it into the regional layers and load it into CAD with all the rest of the data. We've also talked about, I had been exchanging emails with the training coordinator at Columbia 911 about me coming up and giving a presentation, maybe somewhat similar to this, to kind of make sure that dispatch staff are aware of, below the surface, how how these maps are configured and maintained, and to solicit feedback and any sort of pain points or issues that they might run into that maybe they were reluctant to share, to make sure that they know that they can share those with us and that we can accommodate them most of the time. So yeah, I don't think there would be any degradation in terms of the level of support that you would be getting.
How about for the end user? Would they still go through CCOM, or would they have a direct line to you, or how would that work? 'Cause I mean, I know many times a lot of agencies that came in and sat with Cindy or whoever's in that position and had maps made up, etc. So how would that affect our end user?
Yeah, that's something that we haven't included in this agreement. There's actually a section that does state that the support is between Columbia 911 Dispatch Center and WACA, and that the support of the end users is basically the support that WACA provides all Magix end users, which is configuration of the mobile mapping application. So certainly, if there are errors or issues or additional custom layers they want to display on the mobile map, we can accommodate all of that. But as far as extra mapping services, like say creating a wall map, that's not something that's called out specifically in this agreement. And if it were, I'm not sure how frequent those requests are, or those sitting down together that you mentioned. But it could be kind of addressed on a case-by-case basis. I mean, if it was some intricate, say, 1,000-page map book product that they wanted created, that would be one thing. If it were just a basic map to print out on a poster size and hang up at the fire station, you know, those types of things could be accommodated on a case-by-case basis.
I add that we still have our plotter clearance, so we're not losing our ability to print maps. It just need to figure out the new workflow.
Good question, Bruce. Rob?
A lot of my comments and thoughts have already been expressed with previous conversations, so I won't bother to repeat those. Myself, I know I really like the point of contact, customer service, of having somebody internal that could interface with our user agencies. Definitely that was very beneficial when CAD first started up. They were a good liaison. Having that said that, though, I think the bigger picture is living within our means, our fiscal means. We know that we just can't pass automatically any increased expense to us, to end users, or to the public. I see a lot of benefits in moving forward with this, and as I try to look at the cons, I see right now, you know, we have a termination policy in here that's a 30 days. So it's, if we find out we don't like this, it's not working for us, this is going to be easy enough for us to get out of. It's not like we're committing something here for 1 or 2 years. And with that, I'm in support of this path.
So I'm not asking for a motion or an approval, because the document that we have, the support agreement, is a draft. We're just waiting, both Ian and I are waiting for his bosses to approve this document. So there's always a potential of a change, of an edit, so I don't want to do that today. So my intent is, once we get the WACA administration to sign off on it, then I will present it to you for consideration. So
I'm generally supportive.
thank you. Any closing comments?
Yeah, the only other comment in regard to end user support. So before the pandemic, we were having regular quarterly meetings, which we called the Magix Mobile User Group. And basically it was one police and one fire representative from each of the 4 PSAPs. And the idea was those reps spoke on behalf of the rest of the user community. So in terms of deciding on changes to the base map, changes to the functionality, adding adding layers, those were agreed upon as a group, since it does affect everyone. Those have kind of gone into hiatus with the pandemic, but we're looking to re-implement those. So that would be another avenue that, you know, the needs of Columbia response agencies get heard and get met. Those reps would attend those meetings and then kind of communicate that information back out to the rest of the user community. So we're looking to get those started back up this year.
Very good. Thanks, Ian.
All right, thank you.
All right. Sean, I guess we're ready to go.
Okay, do we have any additions to the agenda?
We've changed the agenda about 10 times this week, so I think we have everything, I hope.
All right, we will move on to approval of the February 24th, 2022 regular meeting minutes.
Mr. Chair, I move we approve those as presented.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the February meeting minutes. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, motion carries. Thank you. And moving on to financial reports. We have an acceptance. First of all, I always like to ask, Nancy, I saw your report. Anything aside from that you want to add?
Nope, everything's looking good.
Okay, great. We have acceptance of the budget variance.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the budget variance report as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the budget variance report as presented. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carries. All right, hopping over here to the agenda again. Oh, approval of expenditures.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the expenditures starting with check number 30673 through 30726, including electronic payments and transfers for a grand total of $257,878.96.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the expenditures as presented. Is there any further discussion?
I did have a question on the check number 30695, Stephen Fulmer Professional Services. What was that for?
That is, Stephen is the business coach, life coach for the agency that we've been working with for the past year. He's working with admin staff, the new folks in leadership on resiliency training for them on a monthly basis. So,
How's that going?
I think it's well, but I would turn the table to Alex and Danelle, who are receiving the bulk of the benefits right now. These also will be working with Wendy, our lead, and we have a brand new lead, Jared, and he's working with them on leadership skills.
To that point, there's 4 of us that are kind of in your position, so it's extremely useful to have some leadership guidance, especially from a professional source, meeting one-on-one with us and also in groups with our new leadership team.
Great.
Yeah, I would second everything Daniel just said. It's been really good.
Excellent. Thank you. That was all I had.
Any other questions? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 And motion carries. Budget Committee appointment, zones 2 and 3. I can report that Casey Wheeler is not interested in serving again.
Okay.
Do you have an alternate?
I was going to offer something that may seem a little counterintuitive, but I would be willing to serve on the budget committee for my zone, if that's something the board is willing to entertain. I think the amount of time involved in that is a little more prudent for what I'm doing.
That's the first time that's happened in 30 years.
I don't want to leave you guys hanging, and I waited till too late to get in touch with Casey. So,
Well, I'm good with that. And
I'm thrilled.
Can a board member from a zone appoint himself to the budget committee?
Maybe I should wait.
We'll take action in April,
Yeah.
There you go.
and that'll be fine.
That's if we have a board member in April that could make that appointment.
Yeah,
I just wonder if it's okay to do that. I mean, it's,
TBD.
We can run it all by, but I'm thinking what's going to happen today and next month should be okay. But I can run a legal poll and make sure we're okay.
and I did ask Steve Reed to continue, and he graciously accepted.
Very good.
So we just need to take action and appoint Steve Reed, please.
Mr. Chair, I move that we appoint Steve Reed to the St. Helens Zone Budget Committee position.
Second.
I was gonna beat you. Just keep it moving. But it's been moved and seconded to reappoint Steve Reed to the St. Helens Zone Budget Committee position. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you. Motion carries. All right. TBD on the Zone 2 then.
Yep.
Operations Manager report.
Hello.
Hi.
So an update on some of our staffing. So we're budgeted for 2 lead dispatchers, and we have 2 with Jared doing well in his role and getting some training. We have budgeted for 15, 9 actual, with one of them being in training and she's doing well. And we still have our 2 part-times. The hire that we had set to start on March 28th actually withdrew her application for personal reasons. And we are in the current hiring that actually closes at midnight tonight for accepting applications. So far we've had 10 submit their applications, and to that point I have actually provided the board with recruitment cards that were in front of you, as well as anybody else that's in attendance. There's some on the countertop as you walk out if you'd like to share those with community members or people that you think would be suited to the role. I imagine that we would be reopening hiring in the near future after this round. The ones that have submitted are being reviewed and moving into testing. Jared did start with the district in 2014 as a lead dispatcher, and he is participating in that Fulmer training as well as working in some work groups with Alex and I, who used to be in the lead roles. Inquiries, we've had 0 external. The one that was pending from the last update resulted in training, and we have 1 new one that's pending. 911 Telecommunication Week is coming up April 10th through the 16th, so we wanted to present to board members the proposal of you, if you're interested in signing some thank you cards or recognition cards for the dispatch staff. There's also the option of signing your name to a piece of paper, and Mary Jo could help us have those printed instead of hand signing them if you prefer that. We've got spring training in April, 2 different dates. That's going to fill a lot of requirements through the state and our agency for keeping up certifications, updates on changes. We've got some really great stuff in store that Alex has planned. He stepped out to take a call. Is there any questions or feedback about the 911 week?
You know, we used to put on a pretty good hoo-ha around here for 911 week, and we kind of quit that. I don't know why, but sure would be nice to actually go back to doing something nice for staff. I mean, we used to barbecue and put on a big old spread and buy gifts and stuff.
Absolutely, I missed that as well. Yeah,
We have some plans.
Oh my God, let's get on with them. Hell, it's only 2 weeks from now.
We do have some stuff planned already, kind of like word bingo with fun 911 related phrases for prizes and nominating within the group for fun awards for little trophies that we picked up, that type of stuff. If you have an opportunity and want to let dispatch know how awesome they are, I'm sure that they'd appreciate it. Oh, one other thing, I'm so sorry. I did want to let people know where we have posted applications and if anyone had suggestions for more. So when we opened up hiring, we posted it with all the local newspapers, Spotlight, Verno News Voice, Chronicle, The Chief, our website, Craigslist, Indeed, the SDAO site, Government Jobs, LEDS with the Oregon State Police, APCO, and our Facebook. So,
Did you say SDAO?
yeah.
Okay. That's pretty extensive. I can't think of anything else. Any other place to post? It's a good list. Any questions for Danelle? Okay, thank you very much. Nathan.
I can give Nathan. Oh, Nathan, do you want to give your report?
Sure.
Okay.
I don't know how well I sound. The internet's been pretty sucky out here, but I'll give it a go. So, first point is Vernonia radio site. So the fencing project is complete and much more secure now. And took a look at the work, and it's pretty dang good. This week, Chandra and I and Merckx have all been attending Central Square Engage here in Florida. We've all been checking out the different vendors, the different user sessions and sessions put on by Central Square, and been learning quite a bit about the direction that the company's going and all the improvements that they have planned for the future. And the last point I have is the network. So we're continuing to improve our SD-WAN CAD connection, and we've been able to improve the stability and throughput of this network.
Hey Nathan, did you put razor wire on top of that fence over there at Corey?
Yes, we did.
I didn't hear that.
Yes.
Oh, good.
We have also improved some security equipment, and it's not complete yet, but it's halfway done, and it's impressive.
Well, with the amount of trouble we've had up there,
Yes.
we need to maybe bring in some big dogs.
I'm going to add one thing to Nathan's report. This past weekend on Sunday, we did have a CAD outage. You're going to see in your new business an authorization. So the cause of the outage, so it's always a good bad thing, are the servers, the primary servers that are the brains of CAD. I don't want to get too technical, but we have two hubs. We have a hub at Clackamas 911. We have another hub at Washington County 911. And those servers are big bad boys. They're about $400,000. And they are, for the most part, our CAD system is running on what's called VMware, so it's virtual machines. So we really have 30 plus servers that run and support all the various features and functions of CAD. But the big brains are these Tegile servers, and they're dual redundant, and there's two hubs. And when we designed CAD 7 years ago, it was purposely built to do certain things, and some of that is to when and if you have a failure, the system will fail over, which it did partly. And we knew when we designed it that we could automate some portions of the failover. But there was a lot, and I quantify lot, of things that require a manual intervention. So the system will auto dump and start up, but there's a whole bunch of manual interfaces that have to be restarted, relaunched, and etc. And there are dozens and dozens of these things within CAD, what all encompasses CAD. And so that can take hours to do. Our philosophy back then was hours of down CAD is better than days or weeks of down CAD. And so we opted for what we did, what we built. And that's exactly what happened on Sunday. We were down for about 2.5 hours or so when the system came back up. So we all practiced failover and going manual, and that's what took place. What failed was a component or one side of a Tejal server. There's a couple of compounding factors. Those things are old. The servers have a life expectancy, and they were, I think, installed in 16, 17, somewhere like that. No, it was 16. But they're at the end of life, which we knew. And so Magix and PDCC have been planning for this since the inception of those devices. And in fact, over the last 2 years, we have worked to identify replacement servers, spec them out, test them, and they were purchased actually this past year. And so we'll cover this again in new business, but the process of those new servers are actually already here, they're already in place, and over the past couple of days, work has been taking place to load those new servers. One of the other compounding factors, it is what it is WACA is physically moving from their current location to a brand new PSAP, and so their network is being divided and moved at the time. So it's a little complicating factors. It's just timing that hit us is where it is, but that did take place. I've had updates over the last 24 hours from the tech team that's rebuilding CAD, and it's going extremely well. So just wanted to share that in addition to Nathan's report.
Okay. Any questions?
Curious with that, does that mean there's going to be another switchover once everything's done and complete?
So it already has happened. It happened actually yesterday, mid-morning. We had an emergency meeting of the CAD management team. That's the 4 directors, and the tech team walked us through what they were doing or what they wanted to do immediately. And that actually took place midday yesterday. It's seamless for the dispatchers and the users because of the way it's built. So they didn't even see a blink. So keep that going.
Any other questions?
All I heard is it worked.
It did.
It was supposed to.
It did. Feel good.
Hate to have anything break down, but it's all Fords. It's all just equipment.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Nathan. Enjoy your trip. Safe travels. Old business.
So we'll start off the usual things. Dixie Mountain, that project is still on hold. We're not doing anything there. Clatskanie, University of Oregon Geology Department continues to work for the installation of their seismic equipment. Corey Hill, which we just kind of spoke about, the new fencing's complete. We're doing upgrades to the security cameras. That's in progress. To your point, Henry, every month we were making headway on repairs and replacements of the equipment that have been stolen or damaged, and that continued to be, we continued to experience losses up until just recently. So we don't have that transfer switch in yet. We don't really know when it's going to be here. It's a supply chain issue. Most recently, the last battery was stolen again out of the generator. I didn't even replace it this last time because it was until the fence was done. Fence is done now, so that will be replaced. They started to dig up the grounding cabling in for the site. I have to have Day Wireless come back around and check it. They didn't take it all, but they may have loosened up some of the welds, so Day Wireless is going to go back out and complete those repairs. We also had So while the new fence is in, or the cover of the fence, they also had re-damaged the fence prior to the fencing company get there. So in our packet today is going to be an authorization to pay a little bit more, literally I think it's a couple $100 more than the authorized limit of the fence repair replacement, because there was new damage that they have fixed. And so we'll cover that here shortly, but that's coming. That's Corey Hill. Next Gen radio system. So still conversations amongst you as a board about options, solutions, potential solutions. Those conversations still take place outside of the building with our user group. They're active conversations. It's all good information. There is a request from Mr. Miller to provide a presentation to either both the board and or the advisory committee. I know Sean, the president of the board, has had presentations from Tyler, and he has had conversations directly with Mike Russell, chair of the advisory committee, as have I, and so that is kind of in consideration of when perhaps the option is to have a separate work session of just the advisory committee, just for this purpose, the purpose of the presentation versus during a regular meeting. So that's all in flux right now, while Sean, the board, representing the board, Mike Russell, myself, formalize a plan there. Also, at the last board meeting, there was discussion amongst you about, it was a good conversation about vulnerability. The ask was, we know that the board and the advisory committee and the users need additional time to kind of coalesce their decisions. But in the meantime, the clock is ticking, and so the question was asked, of our current system today, how vulnerable are we? How much time do we have, if any, to continue this contemplation of a replacement plan? And so, is there anything we can do today to keep the clock extended? So, good question. So I've had follow-up meetings with Motorola, with Day Wireless, with M&I, to help answer those questions. And so we broke it down into several different things. Radio site transmitters and receivers. So we're not talking about subscriber radios. We're talking about the stuff that's at the sites in this building. And the bottom line is all of that equipment is obsolete. It's old. It's tired. The good news on the radio equipment is, while it is all of those things and more, it's actually readily available, either in warehouse stock of surplus equipment on the West Coast with Day Wireless companies. They can readily get surplus replacement radios. They've had a high confidence level in that. They are available in the third tier market, eBay, and they're readily available there. You can go on just about any day and find them basically a dime a dozen. So their level of concern regarding to the radios and receivers was not high, but it's always something you got to keep in the front of your mind, that these things are old. Towers and shelters. Towers for themselves are adequate today. None of them are fear of overloading or falling over. Towers are subject to what band we're going to stay with or move away from. And so, but today, day to day, we're fine. There's a couple exceptions. We know Meisner is in the process of being rebuilt, so that's kind of put that over there. That's being improved upon. There was a conversation about the site at Green Mountain, which we do not own. That's owned by ODOT. And while that tower is pretty well loaded, again, we don't have control over that. We have a vested interest, but then so does everybody on that tower. So that's just a note to us, as well as shelters. So again, other than the Meisner site, all the shelters today are considered adequate. Columbia Heights is packed and small, but today it's okay. It's going to serve this purpose, as well as Corey Hill. Again, another small shelter, but it's adequate today. So they said you can set that off to the side as well. Antennas. Antennas are, again, for the most part, old and ready to be replaced. However, antennas are band specific. So if we are changing our radio frequency band, your antennas are going to change. If we stayed on VHF, they're going to be replaced with new equipment. Are they a risk today? Yes, but their suggestion would be it would be fiscally prudent to just replace them one at a time if it's causing a problem or it's failing, rather than a wholesale replace all your antennas today, just because you may change your bandwidth and you're going to spend a lot of money in labor and equipment and just toss it away. So that wasn't their recommendation. Just let it, if we identify an antenna that needs to be replaced, we'll do that one and move on.
Can I ask you a question about antennas like that, Mike? To me, it seems like an antenna is like the simplest piece of the entire puzzle of getting a 911 call out there. My assumption also is that if an antenna is working, it's working, and if it starts to go bad, it just quits?
Not necessarily.
So how do you then measure whether an antenna is, what you said a minute ago, going bad?
It's all based on the signs and symptoms of whatever the problem that you're being
So
reported.
when the user agencies or dispatchers say, hey, I'm getting weirdness
Crappy,
in my transmissions or receiving out in Clatskanie or something, then we go and look at the antenna as a possible problem.
That's one of the things that they look at. They look at the waveguide, they look at the radios, the transmitters, receivers. So that's all part of the diagnostic of what the sign and symptom is and what could be a possible cause of those signs and symptoms, and antennas are always on that list of potential suspects.
And my assumption would be that a regular VHF antenna for these sites would also be a readily available part.
Yep. Those are readily available, off the shelf, brand new. The other challenge on antennas is just it takes a technical climber to climb the towers. Somebody's just not doing it, with an orchard ladder. So it's a skill set. It costs to climb towers and time. So
I thought that was part of Nathan's job description.
He would probably like that. I don't know. So then we get down to a couple of different things that both Day Wireless and Microwave did have. They put at the top of the risk factor. One is microwave, and it was noted that the district has started a process of upgrading and replacing portions of our microwave backbone over the last couple of years. And they commend that and say, keep doing it. If anything, accelerate it. They're reporting that with the exception of the new diversified pathway between Green and Clatskanie and the new one between Clatskanie and Columbia Heights, they are very impressed with the performance of the equipment, and the path from Clatskanie to Columbia Heights is halfway done. All the new radios are in place and operating. We're waiting on the microwave antennas and the waveguide to be delivered and installed, but that's already been bought and paid for, and that's just finishing out that project. We know that Meisner site is being rebuilt, and there's the plan in there to include obviously microwave shot from Meisner to Clatskanie. But they said that the pathway between Dispatch and Green is failing, and they are trying their best to keep it alive right now, so we had that conversation with M&I. Day Wireless is a part of that conversation on prioritizing pathways to be replaced. First is dispatch to Green, and then Clatskanie to Corey. I don't have numbers yet, but M&I is working up quotes for your consideration in the next, hopefully, couple weeks. I'll have those. But those are, their main concern is microwave and then radio dispatch consoles. So when we usually say consoles, most people think about the furniture in there. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the radio dispatch console, which is the radios that the dispatchers are actually utilizing. We're running on Motorola Gold Elites today. Those systems are obsolete, end of life, and no longer supported. We have been experiencing problems with our workstations, our consoles, over the last year and a half, and that is problematic because when it fails, it's dead. We did lose one for a period of many months, and it was a challenge to find a replacement workstation for it. They're proprietary, and they were hard to come by. And we searched all up and down the West Coast, and finally, after, 5 months, found one. But they're all fragile. And so their recommendation was, again, radio consoles are agnostic for the most part. You should replace them as fast as you can. Okay, well, it was my plan to be part of whatever new radio system we were going to install. That would be part of that work project, but they're saying to accelerate it. There are options, there are different manufacturers, there are pros and cons to all, but I don't have anything to present for you yet. I've asked for quotes with different options, and when I get that, I will let you know. I'm going to pause here, Tyler, if there's something you wanted to jump in on.
Yeah, thank you. Let me front and center again.
Please.
Okay. So just I'm going to try to make this really quick because, as we know, it's a longer meeting than what we're used to, right? So just for a little bit of context, what I've been doing, or what I have done, is I hired an engineer, and we looked at over 55 different radio site locations, or locations. They're not radio site locations right now, just locations throughout Columbia County and adjoining. And we compared apples to apples, VHF versus 700 megahertz, so that we could actually see what the coverage difference was for each site. So I have the maps that actually show that detail, because that's the question that everyone has, is what is going to cut, how many sites do we need on 700, how many sites are we going to need on VHF, and so on. So these maps give a definitive answer to that. So I think that's the first step that the board really needs to, and the district needs to decide on, is what band the district's going to either stay on or go to. So that's what the presentation that's on the table really focuses on. I mean, there's some other things that we can talk about too, but the intention is to focus on the band and get that question hopefully out of the way. And so the board members can actually see, okay, this is what 700 looks like with actual mapping. They're in Google Earth format, so we can actually zoom in down to the street level, and we can see what the coverage is going to be on the actual street where the responders and people actually are. Not on the tops of hills, on the tops of trees, which is what you see when you get a map that's this big for the whole county. This we can actually zoom in on and see, okay, the first responder is or isn't going to have coverage on Scapistranonia at Pioneer Road, so on. The other topics that I just wanted to touch on real quick is related to Mike's report and things that he just talked about. And I did send an email, I think it was last week, that just kind of outlined some considerations. I just want to give a little bit different perspective and maybe some additional information from what Mike shared. So the context of how this came up is, well, board member Rob Anderson brought it up, but on the back channels, the users are talking about how bad the radio coverage has gotten, that it has degraded a lot lately. And so why is that? Well, we don't know. I mean, we have some theories, But there's ways to check this equipment. The first way is to put all these radios that are at the repeaters that are at the hilltops on service monitors and check their specifications, see if they're transmitting and receiving the same as they did out of the box 20 some years ago. If they are, then that answers that question. If they're not, they can usually PM them and get them fixed pretty easily. So what I heard from Mike and what I'm looking at here is just basically what Day Wireless said, but it doesn't really answer the question as to why the users are reporting reduced coverage and then there's not really a plan to take it a step further. So I'm just trying to get a little perspective of what that could look like. I talked about the repeaters already. The antennas, I disagree with Day Wireless. The antennas should be replaced. You know, a long time ago they should have been replaced. But more so, you know, back in 2015, we went to Telway and we talked to their engineers. And we said, give us an engineered design of what you think each tower needs to have. And they came back with completely different designs, what's on antennas and what's on the towers now. The waveguide, which is the coax that goes to the antennas that are up on the towers, that gets old and fails. So that probably needs to be replaced. These are all things that should be looked at anyway. That probably needs to be replaced. The antennas can be tested to see if they're performing the way they should. But Henry, to your point, you asked about the antenna specifically. When you talk about antenna systems, just so you know, you're talking about the antenna. You're also talking about the connectors on the coax. You're also talking about the waveguide, which is another term for coax. And then you're also talking about the antenna system that actually sits inside the shelter. For a Columbia 901 system, there's 3 antennas on each tower. There's 2 transmit antennas and then there's 1 receive antenna. But keep in mind we have 8 channels. So all 8 channels are using those 3 antennas. So there's combining equipment within the shelter that is all considered part of the antenna system. So all of that needs to be maintained and it does fail. So I think, in my opinion, what's going to be the thing that has degraded is going to be the antenna systems. My recommendation would be to engage either Telwave or somebody else. I mean, they'll design antenna systems for you for free. It's a value-added service. So they'll design it for you and say, here, buy our stuff. Here's what we recommend. But they'll design it for free, so that engineering is free. But to my point, you know, why not see what that would cost? If that's most likely what the issue really is with the performance degrade, it seems like the next step would just be, okay, well, let's see what it would cost to actually do that. And then the board can say, okay, here's the reports from the users of this coverage degrading, and then here's what it costs to fix that. Then you can make a decision on, you know, is it worth spending the money now considering, you know, the bigger radio replacement project? But without that information, you just really don't know. And the other thing is too, is that I would consider is, you know, any new radio system realistically is probably going to be a 2-3 year project. And that really also depends entirely on the public's willingness to fund it. And we don't know what that looks like either. So, you know, there's those questions. But I really think the big question is how much would it cost to replace the antenna systems, if that's really the issue. And of course you can, I mean, it's already said in here that they are an issue, but I would get that information because there is a degrade in the radio system's performance, and it can only really be 2 reasons why, either the equipment or interference. So that's just a consideration that I would like the board to have, or Mr. Fletcher. The last thing that I wanted to comment on really quick is the dispatch radio consoles. This is an area that I think the district needs to be just really careful with. Because we don't know what the next radio system is going to look like, we want to make sure that the district goes for something that has open standards. Motorola is notorious for putting things in their radios that blocks compatibility with other radios out. There's only 3 manufacturers of radios that I know of that have open standards, and they are Telex, Zetron, and Intertalk. Avtech was recently, well, not recently, a couple of years ago now, acquired by Motorola. And Mike and I were both at IWCE last week, and I talked to a ton of vendors, and they all said that Motorola is killing Avtech. I don't know why, but that gave me a lot of concern for having Avtech as a possibility. As far as the consoles go, though, you know, just out of precaution, I would really encourage the district to look at things that are open source, narrow it down to 3. The other thing I'd recommend too is create a work group with, you know, like 2 dispatchers, a lead, and a technical person, and have them evaluate these 3 consoles that have the best open standards to see what works for them. They're the ones that got to use it every day. But from a technical standpoint and a physical standpoint on the district side, we just need to be sure that the district, for the benefit of the taxpayers, is going with something that's going to be compatible with any system that ends up being chosen. The other problem with this too, could be a problem, is that all of these new consoles are software based. A lot of them are upgradable through software licenses where, you know, you go in a couple of years and say, okay, I need these features now. And they say, okay, well, give us $50,000 and you can have the key to unlock that feature, right? Well, the point I'm trying to make here is because we don't know what the next radio system is going to look like, whether it's going to be conventional, trunking, and so on, you want to make sure that whatever you choose also is going to be able to support whatever that new radio system looks like in design, functionality, feature, everything. So there's just a lot of considerations. I think the biggest consideration is making sure that you review vendors that are, you know, 100% open standards. And as far as I know, that's just Telex, Zetron, and Intertalk. And you do have Avtech, but there are some concerns there. All right, I tried to make that as fast as I could. Thanks.
Thank you, Tyler.
Mr. Chair, another question that I have, you know, that Tyler didn't mention is how do we know if there's been degrading in, you know, the communication, say in Scappoose or something like that, that it's our fault and not bad equipment in the police cars or fire trucks or things like that? I mean, how do we engage with each individual user to make sure that where the problem actually lies if that is happening? So that's just an open question, doesn't have to be answered today, but I mean, that's just, you know, there's more than just one set of equipment. It's not just all on our end.
Multiple points of failure.
Oh, and another question on these consoles. It seems like, you know, back when we bought the quote consoles, we were kind of coming from the old Motorola console that actually was a big piece of furniture and equipment and had,
yep,
you know, buttons and all this stuff and whatever.
Yep.
And then we went to what, you know, the Gold Elite, which was at the time, you know, world-class standard, was the best there was. It seems like all of this stuff has become so much more software driven that what is a console today? I mean, can't this MacBook Pro be a 911 dispatch console? I mean, how complicated are they, or is it all stuff that has become more off the shelf? I don't know, and those are things that I would really want to hear about. I do agree that if replacing our consoles, and they can be agnostic to whatever radio system we go with, that we definitely should be on that. You know, I mean, if we're waiting months and months and months just to try to find parts on eBay, that's not a good way to do business, I don't think.
Agreed.
Rob?
Well, Mr. Chair, I asked the board for apologies because I'm probably going to get on the soapbox here. As you know, I wear a couple different hats. I'm an end user and a board member. And normally I try to keep those very segmented and not have them mixed together. And I try to make sure that processes go through the appropriate committees and user groups, paths that are well established as they should. I have to tell you here that I currently have no faith in our current radio system. You know, it's like last week I'm standing at Highway 30 in Havelock in the middle of the intersection because there's a car wreck. And I cannot talk to dispatch with a portable radio, when in theory there's a remote receiver site at the Scappoose Police Station, maybe a couple miles away, line of sight. I understand we have issues with BALD, and it comes on and offline due to the microwave links and trees. You know, I think that readily needs to be assessed. This week, I'm working on a vehicle, so a mobile unit in a car. Try to do a radio test through CCOM. It comes back. What I receive is mostly static. Right now, the portable radios, from morning to evening, it's static. So I don't know if we're talking atmospheric with changes with the sun and the layers and skip, but then you listen to it at night and it is crystal clear. So again, with other sites not functioning, I don't know if we're having timing and other overlap issues that have degraded. If you go into the Scappoose station itself, it has the taller antenna. It's able to hear from another site. It's crystal clear. You can be in the building, hear everything just fine. Do a radio test in the station. Ask CCOM how it sounds. CCOM comes back saying loud and clear. Everyone else in the vicinity in our area that's listening to it says, I don't know why they said it's loud and clear. It was awful. It was all staticky, or they couldn't hear what was being said. So we know we're getting into the system. The coverage back into the Scappoose area is just not working. And I've come to the realization that when I first started with Scappoose in '93, there was better radio coverage being simplex, talk in and talk out, than there currently is today. It's great. You can talk across the county with the current system, but if you can't get into it to begin with, what's that giving us? End user equipment, that was brought up, was it maybe 5 years ago? And Tyler may know this or not. But I know at least Scappoose Fire did bring in the radio technicians, had everything gone through. We have implemented newer KNG radios, handsets, and mobiles. So this is radio equipment that's 1 or 2 years old max that has this exact same performance issue. So I'm not a radio tech, but I really don't think it's all just end user equipment on some of it, especially in that part of the county.
I certainly didn't indicate that it was.
No, I know, a very valid question, because it was at one point when those radio vendors did come in, they did do a lot of realignments to radios and tweaking, which did help the end users. So that was a very valid point, Henry, that you made. It's just, we talk a lot about the antennas. It's like, I think we talked last month a little bit about, the presentation. They said they're suspecting roughly maybe a noise floor issue of 20 dBi. Asked Mike last month, do we know what it is currently? Do we know when it was last checked? Is that the reason why we're having these talk-in issues? And Mike was going to add it to his list to maybe see, ask your vendor, hey, has this been checked? When is it? Or what would it cost for this to be done? Just maybe maybe it's not our equipment. Maybe we're just having a lot more interference coming in. Our antennas are dated. Their performance can go down. Waveguides, heliacs, coax, whatever you like to call it. Yeah, there's connectors, there's copper, there can be intrusions. Is that something, have they been checked for ohm testing to check for bad connections or other things? Again, I just know in the amateur world what we do to test antennas with SWRs and ohms and all that to find issues. I'll leave it to the radio techs to say how to do it on the commercial site. But there is very concerning issues right now with the system. And I know there will be holes in areas where the radio system will never get into, and that's where mobile repeaters will have to be used. So I'm not, expecting us to have coverage everywhere. But if we can't access the system in downtown Scappoose, where there in theory is supposed to be a remote receiver site, I think there's an issue. And that's why I would ask the board, to try to be aggressive on an assessment of the current equipment so we can find out. And like I said, it may be our equipment could be fine and we're just getting a lot more interference coming in. Unfortunately, when this system was built, that's when 800 was coming out. People were going to it, and so part of this selling of this current system was everyone's going to leave VHF. when they leave VHF, the noise floor is going to just diminish, and we'll have an excellent system. Well, I think if anything, we found out some people they're holding on to VHF as tight as they can. If not, there might be even more users on it now, which could be even a greater noise floor. You know, whether we change bands or not on a new system, we know we're going to be in our current system for a year or two. We have to make sure it is reliable. And whether that is if the noise floor has gone up, judging, I rewatched the presentation or listened to it from the fairgrounds that was done for Federal Engineering. And as they mentioned with VHF, you know, you find that you might need multiple voting receiver sites. You know, could it just be that our up high sites, you know, they're just being saturated too much, that no matter what we do to them, even if we replace 100% all the equipment, it'll still perform the same, and maybe we need to try to get more VHF receive sites to complement. As they said, it's kind of what they have found to be the normal, even with VHF. Part of this, we know it's been on the docket for a while, because how long have we talked about putting a site somewhere on the hills, Rocky Point? You know, we've tried to work with the FAA to get that site up online to fill this hole. And we've just been, you know, there's just, unfortunately, progress has not been made. You know, is there an alternative, even if it is a short-term while? I mean, you know, Scappoose suffered when we moved. Again, help me here. Was it Goose to Green or vice versa?
Goose to Green.
Yep.
Goose to Green years ago, because that's when Washington DNR was upping their rates, so it was going to cost us a lot more. And that move, when that took place, that already degraded the Scappoose coverage quite a bit, which was not expected. So,
I agree with Rob, mostly. I think that it would be ignorant for us to not realize that it's going to take a while to find the dollars to pay for a new system, whichever one it is, and get something in place. And we would be fools to not upgrade and continue to move on, because, you know, if we wait 6 months, what good is that going to do us? Because we still have a few years that we have to use the old system regardless. And so why not? I mean, if we can, especially if there's things that we can use in a new system anyway, again, why not? And regardless of the new system, if we have to take action to, or if we can take action to make things better in Scappoose or wherever in the county that we need to with what our system can do, you know, why not? I mean, let's just do what we have to do. But and that all is going to cost some money, but general maintenance of a radio system costs some money.
you know, I'll admit right now, it's like, you know, I cannot support,
Thank you.
you know,
Thank you,
really
Henry.
working on consoles right now that are functioning, you know, when I know there's parts of the radio system that has severe issues. You know, I really think those need the attention. It's been known for a while. We've asked end users to be patient with us because we're trying to save as much money as we can, migrating to a new system or whatever. But I think this has gone on the process a lot longer than we originally anticipated. So, like I said, sorry, I'm not trying to be on a soapbox, but, you know, I just also want to put in some of my experience as an end user to validate the concerns you're hearing from our end users. And hopefully I didn't blend the two hats too much there.
Good data. Yes, Tyler.
If I may, just really quickly, when Mike and I were at IWC, we both were in a class called VHF Is It Dead? And the answer is, you know, no, it's not dead, but it does have a ton of considerations. I mean, a chain coiled up within a radio site's parameter can give electronic noise back to the transmission and cause interference issues. the typical person would not think that, hey, a loose bolt on a tower would cause interference issues, but it does. So the site preventative maintenance is extremely important. But if this is something that the board wants to do, I just want to give a recommendation really quick. The first step would be probably to have drive tests done and also tests at the site to see what the noise floor is on the frequencies. Because as to Rob's point of just buying new equipment, you could buy new equipment, put it up there, spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on that, but if the noise floor is too high, it's not going to make a difference. The prudent part of this is to first do the due diligence on the interference aspect, because you don't want to go spend money on equipment and then find out that you spent a bunch of money on equipment and it's an interference issue. LED lighting is causing a ton of problems. One of the engineers I worked with said that they had a whole downtown corridor within the city of California get wiped out on VHF because a department store put in LED light bulbs within that facility. They were from China. They claim that they meet the FCC requirements, but they're not. It's things like that it's really scary, because you could fix an interference issue. A department store or store could get a new batch of light bulbs in, and guess what? You're back with a noise floor issue from, who would have thought, LED lights. So just my recommendation, is probably to engage AdCom or a local engineering firm to do the drive tests. And one of the things that I never thought about that they brought up is you can have noise from the end user equipment too. So that's where it's important to do those drive tests throughout our service area to see what the noise floor readings are at the portable, at the end user level too, not just at the radio sites. But in closing, I'll just say that I really think the most prudent step is to first engage a qualified engineering company to do that noise floor study, and then come back with that data in a presentation, and then the board can make a decision on the best steps from there.
Thank you. Bruce?
Yeah, sorry, I'm having a real hard time hearing. So I heard Rob pretty well, and I'm not quite sure who else was speaking just before you asked, but I kind of agree with everyone on that we need to check our system, and if we can make things better without buying all the stuff, is the way to go. I'm not a radio guru by no stretch of the means, but I do want to make sure that we spend our money accordingly and make sure that we do the best we can for our constituents.
Thank you. Okay.
I'll just follow up regarding the interference study that has been asked of Day Wireless. They don't have the specialized equipment. They have their basic meters that they can use, but they also agreed with the fact that an individual test per site and drive test was a good idea, and they were working with Motorola, who does have the specific equipment, and see what it would cost to get that loaned out to us for a period of time to do the studies. So that's in the works.
Well,
also, talking about bulb, what are the options? Only because I know I explained to him, it's like Corps of Engineers site, there's private property owner, he has trees in between the two, he doesn't want to cut them down, and I keep getting asked, well, can't we just try to do eminent domain?
But
can't. I know, and I've tried to explain that to him, but I'm getting a lot of heat on that from them, saying, well, what can we do? If we know that's an issue, what can we do to resolve it?
Very good.
And, if we can't move the site like we've been trying to for a while, if there's some way, if you have to relay, another microwave relay or something, what we can do to get the site back on, I don't know. But
okay.
Those are the concerns, at least that I have. Would love to hear what the radio professionals have to say for resolution.
It's definitely a complex issue, for sure. And then all the different parts and pieces to it, and trying to troubleshoot and figure out the source, it's got to be a challenge, and it sounds expensive, but necessary. Are we ready to
Want me to continue
Yes,
on?
yes, please.
Next topic, tow contracts. No new update other than Drake's has dropped off the user group. Not too sure what's going on with them. Ambulance service area, again, that's not our wheelhouse. We're assisting the county health department and users. So there's a lot of energy there regarding the ASA process and the county hiring a consulting firm to reevaluate the current ASA and help develop the new ASA document. And I already mentioned the microwave work between Clatskanie and Columbia Heights. That's all I had for old business.
Alrighty. New business, critical issues, and budget development guidelines.
In your packet, as part of our normal budget work up, Nancy and I have been working on critical issues and what do we call it? Critical issues? Yeah, it's budget development. So I don't know if we're asking for their input.
Review and comments,
okay.
yes.
To the document. Any
Yes.
Gotcha. It would seem it follows right in line with our mission. All these bullets do, or these bolded sections. That's good. I think it. Yeah, this looks pretty solid.
Bruce, did you have any input or comments on that document?
I appreciated the document, and I thought it was well laid out, and yeah, I appreciate it. I agree with Sean that it follows what we're trying to do, so yeah, I agree with it 100%.
Thank you.
Any comments, Rod?
No, nice document.
Okay. All right. We have to vote on this, or
Nope.
okay. Okay. Anything else on it?
No, sir.
All right. Moving on to the next item, as it says right there in black and white, I do have my letter of resignation here that I am submitting effective after this meeting today. I will say that it was a pretty difficult decision for me to make. Of all the boards that I have been involved with, this is probably one of my favorites for sure, because I realize, you know, the mission is so important to the region, and I feel good about leaving because I know we have really good people here, and that makes me feel okay about the decision. And I just hope that, you know, being in charge of another small organization, that everybody realizes how valuable they are at every level. So, you know, all the way down to Mary Jo and greeting people and keeping the minutes and things like that. It's just all really important work, and I just really appreciate everybody and what they've done. And we've got some active community members that are consistent about giving their input and wanting to help make things better for the district, and we appreciate them and appreciate the expertise on this board too. Having users, I think, is massively beneficial for us. And Mike, having his experience in the 911 world coming to us has been great as well. Nancy, I'm not sure we can keep the wheels on the bus without you, so I appreciate all that you do and have done for the district. So yeah, it is with a heavy heart. It's work has just gotten a little much, and you know, I'm sitting in the recliner reading this thing at night, oftentimes just trying to stay afloat on my current job. So I feel like I'd be shortchanging the district if I was trying to maintain a board member position on it. So that's what I have for that. And with that, I because I just didn't want to leave us hanging, I started making calls, and Mike and I talked, and then Jeff Flatt's name came up, and we served together on the Rainier School Board, and I thought he was a great influence on that board. and just a cool head and a good critical thinker. And I think one of the main things that he brings, if he's chosen, is a willingness to serve. So he has that civic mind. I think that's really great. And I guess I'd just like to introduce him and let him talk to us a little bit.
Yeah, Sean's got some wears some big shoes over there, and would definitely be interested in stepping in and serving that on the board. Excuse me, on the board. I am a current volunteer for Columbia River Fire and Rescue. I do live in Rainier, so I do got some invested interest in what's going on here. So, yeah, definitely interested. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Yeah, I was tickled I got his number and we were texting, and when he said that he was interested, I was like, gosh, I don't know why I didn't think of him before, other than the fact that I've been removed from the school board for a little while. So I think he would do the district very well if he was to be selected.
So for the board's pleasure, when Sean and I originally were having conversations about his potential departure from the board, there's always the question of how do we do this legally so we're keeping our bus inside the correct lanes here. So checked with legal counsel just to make sure the proper steps. I know we did this with Dave Crawford, and so legal counsel has guided us, saying that, well, there's multiple ways. It all depends on your circumstances. What is being proposed is acceptable legally. If the board or a board member finds a member of the community who is qualified, and that really consists of being within the correct zone for the 911 district, and they're willing to serve, they can be proposed to the board for consideration. And just like everything else we do here, the board makes a nomination. You have to have the majority of the board approve it, and then it is so. In talking with Sean and him communicating with Jeff, if that is the pleasure of the board, Sean's making his resignation effective at the conclusion of today's meeting, which means that the board could act, probably best interest act in the April meeting. If that is your pleasure, we'll make arrangements with Jeff to be here. We'll make arrangements for legal counsel. Hopefully you can come here. And the purpose of doing legal counsel here is actually for an orientation for whomever is the new board member. Welcome to Columbia 911. This is the type of district they are. This is how they function. This is your role as a board member. This is the do's. This is the don'ts. And that's the whole purpose of that. So turn it back to the three of you of your next steps.
That would be my proposal. Yeah, maybe take it up at the next board meeting. Your decision at that point, obviously.
Well, I would say definitely thank you for doing the legwork to find someone, and thank you, Jeff, for showing up. Yeah. And nice for you to be here and show us, personally showing up that you do have the interest. My only concern right now is I think we made it a point when we talked about the Shelley's position that I believe we did at least open it up, advertise that there was an opening, and ask anyone who is interested to apply. Or let their interest be known. For consistency's sake, I would consider that to be, or what I would like to see to be, our standard, because it does have the openness. It is letting everyone know what's going on and giving everyone the opportunity. And maybe you, Jeff, come here next month. That you may be the only person, but I would like to at least honor that process.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Did we try to go the original route this route that we've gone here before, and we couldn't find an interested party, and that's why we opened it up, or was it truly the process? I'm just curious.
It's been only done a couple times. Once with Kathy somebody, and then
I think I took. No,
you took Connie Budge's, and
That's right.
Connie Budge was the same situation. Wes resigned. Connie wanted to serve, and we appointed Connie. So we've done it both ways.
Mhm.
But lately, you are correct, we have advertised.
Yeah, if that's the pleasure, that's, when we have to advertise and,
We'd have to advertise in the local paper for your zone, so that'd be the Rainier and the Chronicle probably.
And you'd be just letting people know that we're going to appoint someone to fill the remainder of your term here come in April.
So that's the other part of, depending on whom is selected, again, I'm not an attorney, so I don't want, but there are, because Sean has a remainder of his term, there's some, and I don't want to get into legal speak and misspeak, but there's a difference between serving out your term and also being elected. So there's some nuances there that
That's right, thank you. Whether in our bylaws or wherever it's stated, whether it's until the next
Correct.
election cycle, or if it is the remainder of the
It's the
term.
next election, so
Yeah.
it will be next May. Right?
which coincides with my term, actually, also. Happens too.
yes,
Thank you.
You're
for that
welcome.
technicality.
So am I hearing correctly? Well, I've heard from Rob. Bruce, Sean, is that your direction, is to have us advertise in the local publications?
I kind of think the opposite, and I apologize if I can't hear very well, so I didn't know if the gentleman that wants to has interest, if he has interest, and I'm just all for just appointing him. If he kind of meets the qualifications that you said, and I mean, usually people that are interested are watching it anyway, so I have no problem just appointing, and that's just my opinion.
Well, unfortunately, I think we wouldn't have a vote, be able to vote, because we don't have a.
We have a quorum, but it has to be
Right,
unanimous.
it has to be unanimous.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, you can run it next meeting.
Yeah.
So it's a split right now.
Yeah.
So table it till next month, I guess, or
I think we should just
advertise,
Yes,
just
have
roll
Jeff
with it.
submit, and then
Yeah.
Okay.
if he's the only one, then he'll be ready to go, get sworn in, and
That's clean.
we're off and running.
Yep.
That's clean. Yeah, let's
And
do
at which
that.
point in time, he could actually take his first duty, which is to appoint someone or make a recommendation for the budget committee.
Which is already
There we go.
Yes.
pretty easy.
Yep. Very good.
Okay. Onward.
Okay.
My computer went to sleep. So where are we at here? Oh, authorized purchase limit adjustment.
So I'm going to actually take that, move that down, because there's a method to my madness here. So I'm going to ask to move up request for authorization for purchase technical equipment first. That's okay with you?
Yes.
Thank you. So in front of you or in your packet is a document requesting purchase of technical equipment. We need 2 new monitors for CAD workstations. One is for an operational position, the other one is for our back room auxiliary workstations. We have 3 positions back there. They're built for training, in-house academy, one-on-one training off of the floor, where they can a staff member can work on CAD or the phone system or the radio system. They also, it was purposely built for separating potentially exposed COVID employees, but they're not symptomatic, but we could separate them. They could actually do their job from the back room. Anyway, we're trying to finish out building out that pod back there. So we need a couple monitors. They're not inexpensive, $665 each. We need 3 CAD computers. We have 2 new folks in leadership, the training coordinator and the operations manager. Historically, they have not had access to CAD in their office, or at least not officially. It's cumbersome to get them access to CAD, which they both need. So we'd be buying them 2 new workstations so they have CAD at their offices. Again, they're not inexpensive, $1,800 and change apart, together or separate. And then a couple laptops. Nathan prefers to work with a laptop, so it's mobile for him to work from home. He doesn't want a desktop workstation and a laptop, so he just wants one beefy laptop. And then a separate laptop for the training coordinator who puts on classes, so it's advantageous for that. The total is $11,504.49. The provider is CDWG. It's a government contracted discount provider for IT equipment. For the board's pleasure, seeking your authorization.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the purchases as presented for the 2 monitors, computers, laptops, with the grant as quoted for $11,504.49. And I'll throw in the caveat is plus shipping if there happens to be a unexpected charge.
Nicely done. In the interest of time, I'll throw out a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries.
Thank you. Next up is a seeking authorization to pay a bill. So, as I mentioned in my report, we had a CAD failure. Okay, that's fine. We have, thank you. This is a planned expenditure, replacing the primary servers for CAD and CAD to CAD. The actual quote amount here in front of you is $15,157.82. That is Columbia 911 District's portion based on the CAD Magic formula, the PDCC formula. Those servers are $351,000. So this is our expenditure. So I'm seeking, because it exceeds my spending limit authority, you'll see a theme here. That's why I'm asking for authorization to pay this bill. It was budgeted, I should mention that too.
So move.
And seconded. It's been moved and seconded to approve the CDW, the CAD server replacement. Is there any discussion?
I just wanted to say thanks for also providing the breakdown to us on what the other centers are also paying, and realizing that, 7.5 compared to, WAC is 33.
Yeah.
Is
Efficiencies. Yes.
yeah, but we're only paying 7.5, and the total is rounded up to 38. That's not bad.
Bruce, any comments, questions?
Nope.
Okay. Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Next on the agenda, actually, I mentioned this in when we were talking about the security upgrades for Corey Hill. So we, I don't remember the exact month we did this. We did the fence proposal to you. Was that far long ago? Okay. Okay. The authorization was not to exceed $28,361.30. There was damage done from the time this was approved to today. So when we got our final invoice from the winning bidder, which was Town and Country Fence, they did those repairs. So we are actually $175.70 over the authorized limit. So just for housekeeping, seeking your approval to go over and pay the $175.70.
Wow.
Did you need that? Oh.
Well, since I don't want to see Mike having to pick up cans along the side of the road, I'll move.
I'll second. All right, thanks, Bruce. Yeah, moved and seconded to approve the $175 overage to the Town and Country repair bill. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Sorry, did you miss that, Bruce? Signify by saying aye if you're in favor.
Yeah, it's aye.
Okay. Motion carries. Thank you. Now,
Next is spending level adjustment. We've had this kind of conversation, I don't know, in the past year. There was a conversation about spending limit authorities. And it was tabled, but I'm coming back around. And I tried to find the actual state statute that authorizes to give you the number, but I know that off the top of my head that the state of Oregon allows districts and purchasing authority units of government to have a limit, and the limit in the state of Oregon is $100,000 without a board or governmental authorization. We are well below that. We are at a spending limit of $5,000 for any one purchase. And doing some homework, we've had that limit. It originally was installed with Sally, and then prior to her departure in 2011, it was raised to $7,500. But then once Sally departed, it has remained at $5,000 ever since. I will tell you that it is exceedingly difficult to do business day to day with a small spending authority. And just a couple examples. Recently we've had, today, we need to buy equipment and on the move. And so we've been working creatively for some time, meaning we have to spread out purchases that exceed that $5,000 limit. So we'll buy some of the stuff 1 month. Then we have to, of course, wait for our credit card bill to come through. That's usually a 30-day process. We pay that bill. It has to be posted, so that could take another 30 days. So it can be 2-3 months or more to get the equipment that we need, because we're not wanting to burden the board for nickels and dimes. So we do that. The other thing that we end up doing is staff is fiscally carrying the company, the district. So Nathan, myself, we will make purchases. We can only spend so much on our card, so we make up the difference on our personal cards. So I find that inappropriate. So we need to make some kind of adjustment. Checking with my peers around the state what spending authorities other directors have. While the state says we can have 100,000, I don't know of anybody that has that level. Perhaps BOEX director, but we're playing tag with messages. But the most I've found for sure is 75,000. I'm not asking for that, but I'm asking for something above 5,000. And so I'm throwing a dart at the wall saying 20,000 is realistic in this date and time because of the economy and the price of mostly, I'll throw Nathan under the bus, his stuff costs a lot of money. And we need some ability to be a little bit more agile than we are. I will say that with that, Nancy and I have conversations about shopping for new financial organizations. We haven't started that yet, but we're having those conversations that perhaps we would have some better customer service if we shopped elsewhere. So that's potentially in the future, but not a guarantee today. So I'm looking for a dialogue, input from the board, and or action.
How much did you say? Sorry, you cut out. How much you looking for?
20.
Oh, 20,000?
Correct.
Currently,
Yeah, that's reasonable.
currently is at 5.
I think it's perfectly reasonable. In the past, when a new administrator has come on board, especially if it's someone who is not already affiliated with the agency, that dollar amount was rolled back to a bare minimum while we got to know each other. So as you put, it's low because of that. It's low due to the economy and the way things have dramatically increased. The more electronics we're going for, and the cost of doing business has exceedingly gone up. I totally support this.
I do have one question when you're done, Ron.
Yeah, I was just going to say I would respectfully like to recommend this goes on the agenda for next month's meeting when we have hopefully our 2 other board members present to be part of this decision.
Fair. Bruce?
My question was, so with that, what is the district's policy on like bids and stuff? So if you have a $20,000 spending limit, then you still have to follow if you need bids, etc., right?
That is correct. And
Yeah,
yeah, there's state statutes on those things.
Yeah, and that's what I was thinking. I know FDO has it, so I assume that that's what you go under. But yeah, I totally support it, so no problem with that.
I will just add that at the port, my spending authority is 10,000, something that we're going to address as well with the same issue. But again, new in my position, they want to give it some time, and it was probably not the best timing. It was a result of the other departure. So, yeah, we're going through this as well.
So just for clarification for my notes here, the 3 board members present are supportive of that, but there's a request to table it till next month to have the other 2 board members weigh in.
That would be my preference unless there's an immediate need,
That's just what I was going to ask.
which I don't see there being one.
Well, you approved, you made our approvals of those requests, so there's no immediate need that I'm aware of. So,
And as an example, you wouldn't have brought those to us before. I mean, after the increase, right? Those
that's correct.
Not request for proposal items and
Right.
budgeted and all that. So, okay.
But we'd always see it on the expenditure side.
You would, and we would explain those to you.
Yeah, you guys are very good about that, so that's why I don't have any reservations about it.
But obviously, to cover things that we've already contractually agreed to,
Yes.
they should fall within.
Correct.
Okay, tabled that. Good discussion. Director's updates.
I've covered those.
Okay. With that, looks like we're going to go into executive session under ORS 192-6602D, labor negotiations, and ORS 192-6602H, consult with legal counsel, with no decisions to be made.
That is correct.
And then those of you that are departing and not returning, there won't be any decisions. The next meeting is April 28th, 2022.
1 o'clock.
At
Yes.
1 o'clock.
So just to clarify, Sean, you're adjoining after executive session then?
Yes, we'll come back. Yep.
Okay, thanks. Well, there's not going to be any other discussion on any other topics after executive
No.
session?
Well, no, we'll just have member comments and
Reminder of the next board meeting.
There'll be no
date and
action
time.
taken.
no action taken.
Other than to adjourn.
Okay, thank you.
Are you going to be waiting or?
No, if there's not anything else after, I'm going to
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you both. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Sean, thank you again.
Appreciate it.
Because of your position and mine, I will see you on all the other committees.
That's right. We'll be seeing you.
Jeff, we can hold
Okay, we are going back into open session at 12:16 p.m. What do we have left here? I don't have my...
Just a reminder, the next board meeting's at 1 p.m. on April, is it
28th.
28th? Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay.
Excellent.
And then we'll have a budget meeting that afternoon at 3 p.m.
What is the lunch menu this go around?
I don't think we're having one. I know.
1 o'clock. Are there, Bruce, do you have any comments?
We'll do something.
No, thank you.
Okay, Rob?
No, again, thanks for the reports, everyone, including the priorities for looking at the next year's budget.
All right. I will just say that it has been a pleasure serving this board, and I appreciate everything that everybody does. And I wish you all the best and continued success. If any luck, I'll maybe still have a toe in the water here if that is the desire as of next meeting. So with that, I'm going to adjourn the meeting.
Very good. Thanks, everybody.
I take it you're still planning to be here